and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Now, a petition was read out in Parliament today urging the Dewan Rakyat to expedite the tabling of the sexual harassment bill. The MP of Batu, Kawan, Kasthuri, Patto also submitted a motion of appeal for the attention of the Speaker at Harun on a new anti-sexual harassment law for tabling in Parliament at the next sitting in March. She joins us on the show now. Good evening, YB Kasthuri. Now, we'd like to begin our conversation by asking if you were hopeful that the sexual harassment bill would have been tabled and debated in this parliamentary sitting, or was it to be expected that it would have been deferred, especially given the shortened sitting this session?
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for inviting me to share my views on this very, very timely and important subject. To be honest, as the previous government under Pakatan Harapan, the Ministry for Women, Family and Community Development had already mooted not just the conversation but the action on coming up with a new bill to address sexual harassment. And before Melisa Sheraton and the change of government, the bill was already with the Attorney General to fine-tune the legal language, etc. Now, upon Melisa Sheraton and the change of regime, we find that close to a year later, according to the reply given by the Minister now, YB Rina Harun, that it is still with the Attorney General's chamber. So I did not think that it would take so long for something that was already in progress, not something that we were starting from scratch or something new, but work had already been done. A lot of good work had already been done. AWANI has been doing a lot of advocacy work. But I was really surprised because I thought it was going to be tabled in the July sitting, and then I had a lot of hope that it would be tabled in this sitting, but no, it didn't happen. So I am very disappointed.
Could you explain to us what you think might be happening? Is it just a lack of a sense of that this is an important law, or that there are other laws that take precedence, or there are other matters that Parliament needs to discuss? What exactly is holding things up from your perspective?
I think perhaps one of the reasons is that I believe there are new officers in the AG chamber. Perhaps they are taking some time to familiarize themselves with this new bill and to vet through it again, word for word, etc. But then again, we also today only found out, which was actually put on all the MPs' tables, MPs who are going to be sitting in the 9 select committees in Parliament. Perhaps if we had the select committees earlier, perhaps in July or even early in this sitting, then the select committee for women of gender could have actually gone through the bill itself and could have actually saved maybe the Attorney General some time as well to come up with his opinion on it. So I think these are probably some of the issues. And also, I was also sorely disappointed when the Minister of Women Affairs told me, this is why we need opposition MPs to remind me. And she told me, she said, oh, it's good, so for you to remind me so that I can push for this bill to see the light of day. I think it's really irresponsible for her to say that. I mean, you're a minister. Your job is to push for this kind of bills because it comes under your ministry. So I think she should buck up, and I think that she should also realize that we are all here also to support her despite her shortcomings.
Well, okay. Kasthuri, the minister aside, I want to get your sense of how the support from, say, other MPs. Is this a bill that could get bipartisan support? What is your sense of whether other MPs consider this an important bill?
I believe other MPs will consider this a very important bill, a timely bill. As we had seen today that MP for Pontian, Datuk Mazlan, actually supported my petition in Parliament today. And this was something very refreshing because there is a great need and for us to have a new bill instead of falling back on old provisions in other acts and other laws that clearly have served not much of a function. But I think the key is also in briefing MPs the content of the sexual harassment bill. I believe the minister also once said that she was also going to memperhalusi, which is to maybe go through the bill again. So I don't know what are the new amendments to the bill that was actually given to her when Pakatan Harapan was in power.
Kasthuri, do you think at this point it would be valuable to have much more public support or attention in the media to push this process along? Or is it already kind of as we were working itself out, just waiting for the AG's chambers and the governor of the day to put it in the standing orders to make sure that it gets debated and passed?
I think that coming up with a law is one thing, but education and awareness and to keep the conversation going in our society is also extremely important. And as I mentioned in my petition today, there are over 17,500 signatories online on change.org, which is a campaign mooted by AWAM. In fact, in the last sitting, AWAM really approached every individual MP, as many as they could, to get them to commit and to support to this new bill. So I think there's a lot of advocacy work, but I think when you have more people speaking about it, there's a greater urgency and a greater need on the shoulders of the government to commit to tabling it in the coming sitting. So I don't think we should rest on our laurels. I think this is the time. There's already a great momentum now on it, and I think we shouldn't slow down. I believe that we should all be speaking about it. Universities, places of worship, community leaders, your KRTs, your MPKKs, your Residents Association should reach out to civil society like AWAM, WCC, PWDC and Penang, so that we can understand what would this bill entail and how would it protect us once it's in force.
Well, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Kasthuri. We are going to be speaking to AWAM a little bit later in the show. After this quick break, we're going to find out more about the advocacy work that went behind this petition process. Stay tuned to consider this.
Experience the power of nature's care with Love Beauty and Plants.
Masih belum berakhir. Pastikan setiap langkah berjaga-jaga diamalkan, termasuk kebersihan tangan, pemakaian pelitup muka dan penjarakan sosial. Marilah kita sama-sama hapuskan virus ini sepenuhnya. Ayuh berdisiplin. Seperti mana kita semua tahu, virus COVID-19 masih aktif. Sebagai peringatan, amalkanlah penjarakan sosial, kurangkanlah aktiviti kunjung-pengunjung. Keluar bila ada urusan penting sahaja. Kita semua mampu melakukannya dengan disiplin yang tinggi.
COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Pastikan kita sentiasa berdisiplin dalam mengelakkan 3S, iaitu kawasan yang sempit, sesak serta tidak sembang dalam jarak yang dekat. Mari kita sama-sama menjaga disiplin kita, hapus COVID-19.
Kita telah lakukan yang terbaik setakat ini. Tetapi perjuangan kita masih belum selesai. Kita perlu berhati-hati untuk menjaga keselamatan diri bersama-sama. Pakailah pelitup muka, cuci tangan dan bila di luar, jaga jarak yang selamat. Dalam melawan wabak ini, jangan ambil mudah dan jangan alpa.
Perang COVID-19 masih
Hi, thanks so much for staying with Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. A petition was read out in Parliament today urging the Dewan Rakyat to expedite the tabling of the sexual harassment bill. Now, this petition was an appeal from 512 Malaysians calling for the Dewan Rakyat to debate the bill. The petition was initiated by the NGO All Women's Action Society, or better known as AWAM, months ago. Nisha Sabanayagam is the program and operations manager from AWAM, and she joins us on the line now. Good evening, Nisha. What was the impetus behind this petition? Maybe you can explain.
Hi, good evening, Melissa. Good evening, Sharaad. Well, the reason why we started the paper petition was because there was a real need on our end to get people to start talking about the sexual harassment bill again, and especially the members of parliament. Because, after the change of the government and after the pandemic happened, priorities had shifted away from the bill. And another reason was because we were just getting more and more calls every day about sexual harassment. And just to give you a picture, right, this is December 17th. In the month of December, we had a call every day for sexual harassment. In 2019, we received like less than 30 calls in a year. In 2018, we received less than 30 calls. In 2020, we've already received 163 calls to date. So we realized that this was really an issue. And so we started off with an online petition first, and we got 17,500 signatures. And then we met parliamentary consultant, Maha Balakrishnan, who, it was just a serendipity. Yes, it was just by chance. She offered us this process. We decided, we really want people to talk about this in Parliament, and this was a way to do it. It had never been done before. We were really anxious, but we went ahead with it. And it was amazing how people picked up on it. So many people wanted to sign on. So many people came to the office to sign the petition. We had families walking in. We had sisters. We had cousins. We had couples. We had people all the way from Sabah, from Kanga, from Johor, sending us petitions. We were answering messages every day. Everybody wanted to get involved in the process.
Nisha, could you help? And wonderful laying out, the diversity of people who came to sign this petition. But would you say that there's still parts of a society, women in particular, who are left out of the conversation, perhaps don't know or recognize their rights? They might feel the harassment, but not necessarily know what to do with it in terms of their rights and the law. Are there people left out?
Yes, definitely. Because, I don't think we're reaching out to certain marginalized societies. Definitely, we need to reach out to people who don't always speak in English or people who don't always speak in Bahasa Malaysia. We need to also reach out to the migrants. We need to reach out to the refugees. We need to reach out to people in schools, in the smaller rural areas. Sexual harassment happens in schools as well. In fact, it's starting off at a very young age. We've started to reach out to universities, which is great. More and more people in universities are talking about it. Private universities obviously, have a little bit more awareness of the situation. Public universities, we need to reach out to them. And obviously, people in East Malaysia, sexual harassment is rampant over there as well. So we need to also reach out to people who are not just living in the capital cities, but people in smaller towns.
Well, clearly there is a pressing need for, this law and the fact that the bill wasn't debated in this parliamentary sitting. I mean, I'm sure it must have been very disappointing for you and all the other people behind this push. But do you consider the reading of the petition a win?
Yes, definitely. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe the pressure that we had. Can you imagine, people are coming to your door and, signing that petition, taking the trouble to bring their siblings and their parents. There was a lady and her sister who was so old, they couldn't get out of the car. So their carer actually came in and we actually took the petition out to them so that they could sign on the petition. So the pressure was definitely on us to make sure that at least the petition was heard. And we're very, very thankful to YB Kasthuri because she really also made that effort. And I'm sure she probably even told you about this. Mm-hmm. But the amount of meetings that we had to have, the amount of late night phone calls that we had to have among each other, the amount of requests after the petition had been signed, and we told people that we had given it to YB Kasthuri, the amount of people who called in and kept asking us, so what's going on? What's going on? So yeah, it's a really big win, and you can see that a lot of people are really happy for us on social media. But we hope that it doesn't stop at just this. We hope that that the government will continue to work with us in getting the sexual harassment bill tabled. Work with us, other partners, other stakeholders, all the women NGOs who are involved in the process, and we hope that the government will continue to engage with us on the petition.
So, Nisha, can I ask you this? It seems that one of the big paradoxes of this in a democratic society is that women are about half the electorate, and yet women's issues, the issues important to women, don't get the attention they would if women actually had a leverage as an electorate. Why do you think that is so?
Because we don't have enough women involved in the political process. We don't reach out to enough women to actually get involved in the political process. And it's not just about, getting good, great, strong, committed women in politics. Of course, we want that. But we also want more women to be aware of how they can actually help the process. And one of the ways that they can obviously help the process is to understand that they can come out and vote. They can come out and support bills such as the sexual harassment bill and the anti-stalking bill. They can come out and, support women representatives. They can come out and campaign for them. So the reason why this is not happening is because they're not aware that they have this access. And the other thing is also whatever access that they have needs to be widened. The political process and the process in parties about getting women into positions of importance in Parliament is something that also needs to be fixed.
I want to ask you, in the same vein of the conversation about awareness, not just about what sexual harassment entails, I'm wondering whether people understand what's in this bill. Do you think there is enough awareness of what this sexual harassment bill entails?
I think that we have managed to put out information, but once again, also similar to what I said earlier on, we're probably reaching out to people who are able to understand the process in English, and people who are a little bit more aware of the process. We really need to be reaching out to people who don't necessarily speak English, who don't necessarily speak Bahasa Malaysia. And what AWAM has actually been trying to do, and we have actually done this, is actually to put out information in the various different languages. And we've partnered also with various different organizations that we usually don't partner with. So if you see our work on the web and on social media, you see that we partnered up with ABIM. So ABIM is an Islamic organization, the complete extreme from what we are in terms of stakeholders. But they have worked with us to actually talk about the sexual harassment bill to their stakeholders. And they're doing it not just in Malay, but they're also putting out, collaterals in Jawi, because a lot of the people actually read Jawi. And by doing it in Jawi, they also get a lot more buy-in from their stakeholders. So this is one of the ways where we can actually overcome these issues about, how to get more and more people to understand what's actually in the bill.
Nisha, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. We really appreciate your time and your insights. Now, after this, we're going to turn our attention to the pressing need for laws to address stalking. So stay tuned to consider this.
These majestic giants have
masih belum berakhir. Pastikan setiap langkah berjaga-jaga diamalkan, termasuk kebersihan tangan, pemakaian pelitup muka dan penjarakan sosial. Marilah kita sama-sama hapuskan virus ini sepenuhnya. Ayuh berdisiplin.
Seperti mana kita semua tahu, virus COVID-19 masih aktif. Sebagai peringatan, amalkanlah penjarakan sosial, kurangkanlah aktiviti kunjung-mengunjung. Keluar bila ada urusan penting sahaja. Kita semua mampu melakukannya dengan disiplin yang tinggi.
Perang COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Pastikan kita sentiasa berdisiplin dalam mengelakkan 3S, iaitu kawasan yang sempit, sesak serta tidak sembang dalam jarak yang dekat. Mari kita sama-sama menjaga disiplin kita, hapus COVID-19.
Lakukan yang terbaik setakat ini. Tetapi perjuangan kita masih belum selesai. Kita perlu berhati-hati untuk menjaga keselamatan diri bersama-sama. Pakailah pelitup muka, cuci tangan dan bila di luar, jaga jarak yang selamat. Dalam melawan wabak ini, jangan ambil mudah dan jangan alpa.
Perang COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Pastikan setiap langkah berjaga-jaga diamalkan, termasuk kebersihan tangan, pemakaian pelitup muka dan penjarakan sosial. Marilah kita sama-sama hapuskan virus ini sepenuhnya. Ayuh berdisiplin.
Seperti mana kita semua tahu, virus COVID-19 masih aktif. Sebagai peringatan, amalkanlah penjarakan sosial, kurangkanlah aktiviti kunjung-mengunjung. Keluar bila ada urusan penting sahaja. Kita semua mampu melakukannya dengan disiplin yang tinggi.
COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Pastikan kita sentiasa berdisiplin dalam mengelakkan 3S, iaitu kawasan yang sempit, sesak serta tidak sembang dalam jarak yang dekat. Mari kita sama-sama menjaga disiplin kita, hapus COVID-19.
Kita telah lakukan yang terbaik setakat ini. Tetapi perjuangan kita masih belum selesai. Kita perlu berhati-hati untuk menjaga keselamatan diri bersama-sama. Pakailah pelitup muka, cuci tangan dan bila di luar, jaga jarak yang selamat. Dalam melawan wabak ini, jangan ambil mudah dan jangan alpa.
Perang COVID-19 masih belum berakhir. Pastikan setiap langkah berjaga-jaga diamalkan, termasuk kebersihan tangan, pemakaian pelitup muka dan penjarakan sosial. Marilah kita sama-sama hapuskan virus ini.
Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. With me is Sharaad Kuttan. A recent survey by the Women's Aid Organisation showed that despite more than a third of Malaysians having experienced stalking, existing laws in Malaysia do not adequately help those at the receiving end. And joining us on the line now, we have Chung. He is the Deputy Executive Director at WAO. Welcome to the show, Chung. Now, can you begin by explaining why this survey focused on stalking? Why now?
Well, thanks, Melissa, and thanks, Sharaad, for having WA on. WA, together with research firm Fast.ai, conducted this survey because we knew we had a lot of evidence that stalking was a pressing issue in Malaysia based on a lot of cases that WA handled, based on experiences from abroad, how stalking laws is something that uniformly is a problem elsewhere. But we were missing one important piece of data, which is just how many people are affected by stalking in Malaysia. We had an idea based on looking at domestic violence numbers and how domestic violence relates to stalking, but we didn't really have a concrete evidence to show, look, exactly how many people are facing stalking and having a problem.
Chung, what I liked about the survey was I guess it educated me as well to what constitutes stalking. Everything from getting unsolicited messages online to having your property damaged and the like. Maybe you can shed some light very quickly. Do Malaysians truly understand the range of what constitutes stalking?
I think Malaysians have an idea of, when I'm being stalked, it's something I feel that I don't like, and have an idea of what that is. But to give a concrete definition of stalking, it really has three elements. The first is that it's exactly what you said. There's some element, some action that is associated with stalking. So somebody's following me, somebody's messaging me, somebody's leaving things where I may find them, somebody's showing up in my house, showing up in my office. So that's one element. The other element is that the action is repeated or it's continuous. So it's happening to me today, tomorrow, next week. And the third element is that it has some negative impact on me, in that it's either causing me fear or distress. So you can imagine a situation where you're being followed, someone's showing up in your office, showing up in your home. When you're in the shopping mall, they call you and say, hey, I know where you are right now. You're in cinema number 4. So these are actions that anyone viewing them from the outside can say, hey, yeah, that happened to me. I'm going to be fearful, I'm going to be distressed.
Chung, it seems to be one of the other paradoxes of contemporary life is that because of social media, we're putting ourselves out there, we're oversharing on social media, we are calling attention to ourselves, we want attention. And yet, at the same time, there seems to be a line between that, a culture that is accepted, and this, the attention that's not wanted, that's unsolicited in a way that is threatening. So how do we calibrate this so that we don't we don't get ourselves in a bind? I mean, what exactly, what is the grey areas in this stalking issue?
I think that's a good point. I mean, there are two things I would say. The first is that when people do these kind of things, they experience different kinds of reactions and backlash. So me, as a man, when I share things, for example, I may not be subject to the same kind of doxing or harassment or unwanted messages that a woman in my position may feel. So the effects of that sharing is unequally felt. So I think that's one problem. The second problem is that we all want to live in a society where we're free to do things that we want to do, as long as we're not harming other people. So we want to live in a society where I'm free to express myself on social media, on Facebook, or in any other platform. So the role of the government, the role of the law here is really it should help ensure both that everyone is able to express themselves in a way that is meaningful to them, and that the law protects everyone equally. Everyone should be able to have that same right. So as far as the law goes, we need to ensure that we have some kind of protection, some kind of limit for people who may be experiencing this kind of harassment or stalking online or offline.
Okay.
And that's why we need a stalking offence.
So there are legal protections for certain forms of stalking, but you argue that they're not adequate. The laws don't adequately protect the victims of stalking.
That's right. So, for example, if you're being harassed by a relative or a spouse, so your husband or wife, or an ex-spouse, then you'll be covered under the Domestic Violence Act. And then if you're being abused, you can get some kind of protection through a protection order or an interim protection order against being followed or further harassed. If you're a victim of traffic, if you're a trafficked person, you can get a protection order, for example. But what our survey showed is that stalking affects so many kinds of between so many people relationships. So people are stalked by strangers, are stalked by acquaintances, are stalked by boyfriend or girlfriend, and none of these categories of people are protected under any existing law. And the vast majority of stalking cases involve those kinds of relationships. So these people are completely left out of the protection mechanisms currently.
Richard, in what ways is stalking gendered as compared to, say, sexual harassment, which I know is gendered disproportionately with women are the victims, but is that true of stalking?
Correct. Well, what we found in our survey is that stalking affects both women and men a bit differently, but both are affected in quite high. So overall, about a third of Malaysians, we estimate, based on this survey, experienced stalking, which caused them fear. So they were followed or received a lot of messages and so on, continuously or repeatedly, and that action caused them fear. So that's what we really want to capture as stalking. So 36%. But what we found, what the survey found also was that for women who are being stalked, women tend to be more fearful, to be stalked in a way that makes them more scared. Men also, but a bit more for women. Whereas for the men, the stalking tends to involve threats or actual harm. So it will escalate to physical harm or involve threats. So those are at lower levels, but we find that men experience those a bit more than women. So stalking here, I think it's a very interesting thing that we found, and an important thing that we found in the survey is that, yes, there's a gender component, but stalking and severe kinds of stalking which causes fear, leads to harm, is quite high. About a third of Malaysians experience stalking that cause them fear. That's a high number, which is still in line with what we would expect from looking at other countries.
Ranjan, thank you so much for joining us on the show, and that survey and the results of that survey were illuminating to us. Thank you for putting it out there. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.